Hello and welcome to UltiWorld's coverage of the 2014 Northwest Challenge. We're live from Seattle, Washington. I'm Charlie Eisenhood alongside Keith Rayner. We're very excited to bring you this showcase game matchup between the University of Washington, the host team here in Seattle, and the #1 ranked University of Oregon. Keith, we've already seen these teams face off twice this year. 2 wins for Oregon and 2 strong wins. University of Washington has not beaten Oregon in over 2 years. Are we expecting to see a good game today, or is this going to be more Oregon dominance?
I think you'd be hard-pressed to say that this game is quite like the other games that they've played. When I talked to Oregon coach Lou Burst before the game, he admitted he doesn't think they've really seen everything that Washington has so far. Washington's been missing one of their top players, Barbara Hoover, who's been abroad leading into this game, and so she's returned. They've had some injury troubles that they've run into, but they're fired up to play in front of their fans at their home tournament. It's basically a one-off game, so these teams each have played today but are pretty fresh. So expect to see fireworks and essentially the best rivalry in all of women's college ultimate.
It's going to be a great game, and the pull is up here. It is Washington pulling to Oregon. Oregon in the blacks with the yellow shorts, Washington in white with black shorts. And this game is underway. Sophie Dart starting things off for the Oregon offense. And it's an immediate turnover for Oregon. So perhaps a sign of good things to come here for the University of Washington. As they walk to the disc, their defensive line with the first opportunity to get a break in this game.
Right away seeing top players matched up with each other.
Shira Stern with the disc, one of the top handlers for this element team. Plays on both ways as we see a drop on the far side. And Oregon attacking quickly. Jessie Schaffner moves it over to Alex Ode. Now ahead. Bethany Kaler with it. And she'll go ahead. Nice grab in traffic from Olivia Bartroff, who's been playing well for this Oregon team so far this year. And into the end zone for Schaffner. Oregon on the board here first. So Washington with an opportunity, but Oregon punches it in for the hold and the 1-0 lead.
Now, this is not something that you should be unaccustomed to. Oregon is not afraid to give you opportunities to touch the disc. This is not that offense that comes out and mechanically moves down the field, takes 10, 15 throws and punches it in without your D-line touching it. They're going to take shots. They're going to be willing to give the disc up because they're very confident that they can get the disc back. They thrive in transition, and so they're going to be a much better team when they're moving the disc quickly and they're forcing their opponent to do the same. It's going to be something Washington's going to work really hard to take away, is that transition offense that Fugue has really made their trademark over the past couple of seasons.
So Oregon with the early lead. And now we'll get our first look at the Washington offense. And Washington has been a little bit up and down so far this season, Keith. Came in with a lot of expectations at the start of the year and certainly has played well, but maybe not up to the expectations that were present at the beginning of the season when they were ranked #2 coming into the year. What has been the ailments for this Washington team, and are they starting to see things turn around? You saw them play earlier today.
Oh, they had a very strong showing earlier today. They really put a beating on Colorado, who's a strong team. And Coach Kyle Weisbrod of Washington Element told me that it's basically the best ultimate he's seen the team play since the first real game they've put together. So they're excited to see what they can do, and so we see them starting with an early turnover here.
Kelly Hall looking for Amanda Kostick and turns it over on a simple backhand up the line. And now we have a stoppage on the field. Jessie Schaffner with the disc for Oregon.
Not sure if we'll see a lot of that, but a smart tactic to see if there are early opportunities to make a call to slow down the fast break that Oregon's going to try and initiate with.
Oregon now back underway, going ahead to Andrea Fontenot. Fontenot ripping the backhand, looking down the field, but a nice defensive effort. A bid in the end zone. Rachel Hershey trying to make the second effort, but good block downfield from Washington, and they get the disc back, and the offense will try again.
Hershey, a new name for many people, but just another in the long list of athletes that Oregon brings to the table.
Amanda Kostick looking down the field for Barb Hoover, but Schaffner easily getting the block. And now her throw floats too high, and it's back in the hands of Washington. And immediately they attack downfield. Big backhand, 2 defenders down the area, and a second effort goal. Beautiful catch. After the disc tipped down out of the hands of the intended receiver. So Washington on the board and very excited, and the hometown crowd here excited as well, as the team is all tied up at once.
A bit of a chaotic point there, and you think that would favor Oregon. When I talked to Coach Lou Burris before the game, he said that they really want to make this game chaotic. He said they want to play with crazy energy because they are the crazier team here between the two, and that they wanted to make the pace frenetic and the game chaotic. And you think that would play into their hands, but Amanda Kostick is that chaotic element for the Washington offense. She's a shooter. She's the classic shooter, and you know a shooter's got to take their shots.
So after a couple of turnovers from each team, both offenses hold. And both of these programs with a high-profile coach, Keith, and both maybe not coincidentally have won national championships recently. Of course, Oregon coming off of a national championship last year, dominant performance at the college championships in 2013.
Now, one of the only teams to challenge them last year consistently was this Washington team. They did not lose by more than 2 points last year in any of their 3 matchups. Washington was able to push Oregon repeatedly, and when I talked to Coach Kyle Wise before the game, he said, we know we can play with this team, and that's in spite of those 2 giant losses that they've suffered at the hands of this Fugue team so far this season. So Washington saying it's not in their heads. They're ready to play with this team, and we see them come down with a zone look.
Sophie Darch with the disc against the 4-man cup, and high hands of Washington, and she finds some space on the outside, floating it over to Amelia Lanning. Now disc moves back around. Darch looking for the reset, doesn't get it, in the hands of Caitlin Brunick. And now she'll go down the field, and that throw never has a chance to reach its target, and it rolls out the sideline near the front cone of the left end zone. So Washington's defense with their second chance of the game. Beautiful night here in Seattle. It was raining all day, but the rain clouds dissipated over the last 2 hours, and now we have pleasant temperatures. It's probably in the mid-50s right now. Light wind and clear skies.
An interesting matchup change during that brief change of possession. We saw Oregon switching Bethany Kaler onto Sarah Edwards. Alicia Letourneau trying to chase down this deep shot, but not going to get there. Look for Washington to try and set up the zone again to slow down their transition opportunities for Oregon.
Darch picks up, and again, the big flick over to that sideline. Now Oregon with some breathing room on the other side. No defenders. It's a 2-man game on the outside. Back and forth. Right on the goal line is Bethany Kaler. She taps it and now looks to the end zone and overshoots her man.
Had a wide open receiver in the front corner screaming for her to see her, but Kaler not able to see and does take the difficult shot into the end zone. Kaler and Odie really running the field there after the nice over-the-top throw from Darch.
We may be seeing some nerves from these teams here early in this contest. Some uncharacteristic turnovers for both teams. Sidelines have really filled up with some fans as we watch Washington work it over to the sideline. Good pressure here from Oregon in the man-to-man defense, and another short field turnover from Washington. So Darch will walk to the disc for Oregon. Float it to the middle for Brunick. Back to Darch. Good movement from Oregon's handlers. Inside look right to the front of the end zone, and now into the end zone goes Oregon, and they retake the lead 2-1.
A nice possession there from Oregon, certainly the cleanest offense that we've seen them run so far, and it's no coincidence that Sophie Darch was able to break open the zone and initiate that possession effectively. She may be the best thrower in the women's college game, and that's why she's considered one of the top players and certainly on the short list for the Callahan Award this season.
You're watching Ultiworld's coverage of the showcase game at the Northwest Challenge, live from Seattle, Washington, presented by 5 Ultimate. Keith, this is really an early look for most folks at home of the Northwest Challenge, which is a very different kind of tournament here at the end of the regular season. Lots on the line, bids, bragging rights, nationals seeding, and there's an unusual setup to this tournament. Can you take us through the way that this is set up as opposed to the regular tournament where you would have pool play followed by a championship bracket?
Yeah, right now we have 12 teams who have been brought here, and there is no bracket. There are no pools. Just each team has 7 straightforward games. They know their schedule well ahead of time, and it's spread over 3 days for most teams. There are a couple teams that have specific circumstances that require them to have all of their games in 2 days. They have a bit more of a traditional 4-game, 3-game schedule. But for some of these teams, including both of these teams, we'll see all of their games spread out over the 3 days.
Pull lands in the hands of Washington. Kostick in the middle, and she goes to the outside, and that throw a little bit too high for Barbara Hoover. So it's another quick turnover for the Washington offense, and it'll be Schaffner centering the disc to Haley Walrus, one of the freshman phenoms on this Oregon club. And there's a stoppage on the field, Keith.
One of the Oregon players I talked to at the beginning of this year said Haley Walrus is the best freshman she has ever seen. That's high praise when you're talking about a program that continually draws some of the best talent in the country.
Walrus ahead to Schaffner. Schaffner fakes, moves it ahead up the sideline to Andrea Fontenot. And Fontenot's throw a bit behind her intended receiver. So Washington will get it back. Turnovers continue for both offenses early in the contest. This now with Stern. Moves it to the middle and gets it on the strike cut right back. Stern fakes a flick, now the backhand down the field and not quite into the end zone. Molly Boyd now getting into the end zone, wide open receiver, and Washington back on the board. And this game is tied up once again, 2-2.
Washington's offense is going to operate at its best when their star players are getting a lot of touches. And I know that may seem very elementary, but for some teams, they want the disc to flow through a number of players. For Washington, they want a couple of players getting a dominant amount of touches and being able to power that offense. And there we see Amanda Kostick and Shira Stern being those players on that point. Interesting to see Molly Boyd already playing a factor. She's a player without a ton of experience, but is a former varsity soccer player at the University of Washington. So she is a top-flight athlete, and they're really excited about what she can bring to the table this season for Element.
Game even so far. Both teams with an unusually high number of turnovers. It's not particularly windy right now, and I think you're seeing a bit of these teams feeling each other out once again. Obviously, they played twice this season, but in some ways the stakes are higher, and it's this showcase game under the lights, and we've now got a sideline full of fans, probably easily over 100 people on hand to watch the game. And in sort of traditional Ultimate fashion, everyone lining the sideline as the pull goes up from Washington. Disc gets away for a moment from Oregon, and now they'll shoot down the field. Look at the speed downfield. Michelle Herman into the end zone, and a great, easy point there for Oregon. The first we've seen this game of just quick, easy offense, Keith.
Yeah, the side stack set, second time we've seen that so far from Fugue. It's going to put a thrower like Sophie Darch on display, especially when she has a speedster like Olivia Bartroff taken off for her. Bartroff able to separate a lot there on that point, and all Darch has to do is just muscle the disc downfield for a receiver like that.
And indeed, that was Olivia Bartroff, my mistake earlier.
Bartroff playing very well for Oregon so far this year, using her speed and quickness to be a big impact player downfield for them.
And Oregon, so far this season, continuing the dominance they showed last year, has just one loss, as they did last season. And in some ways, it's hard to imagine what they would have to do in order to lose the #1 overall seed this weekend. Probably need to lose more than a handful of games.
I might have to disagree with you there, in part because of the strength of the other two teams that are really a big part of the equation. There were maybe 5 teams that might have had an argument should Oregon lose, and 2 of those teams lost today, Stanford and Western Washington. But the teams remaining, Ohio State and Central Florida, both have arguments if Oregon can take a loss, especially at the hands of Ohio State, who's at this tournament. Central Florida not here, but Central Florida already with 2 wins over Ohio State, so anything could happen, and that's what makes this tournament so exciting.
Washington's offense back underway. Good movement across. Now backhand up the sideline. It's in the hands of Kelly Hall. She moves it back to the middle for Kostick, and now a stoppage. Kostick will walk and pick it up.
Toki knocking that disc out of Kostick's hands on accident.
Kostick flick to the open side. Stern holding. Now back to Kostick in a good position to attack the end zone, and she does. And a nice smooth point there from Washington.
Again, we see how often they want their star players touching the disc. Their offense just completely functioning with Shira Stern and Amanda Kostick as those pistons that allow them to fire. But we have seen them initiate often with Barb Hoover downfield. She's someone who's played with her veteran teammates pretty often, so I'm sure she has a good feel for them. But just coming off of not having played over the past couple of months and not having played with the team, it's a bit surprising to me to see them asking her to take on such a big role right away.
You're watching Ultiworld's coverage of 2014 Northwest Challenge. We see Kyle Weisbrod, coach of Washington, out on the line. We'll be right back.
Ooh, hey, trick shots. Can I try one? Oh, must have been the wind.
Welcome back to Ultiworld's coverage of the 2014 Northwest Challenge. All tied up here, 3-3, under the lights in Seattle. Washington getting set to pull.
This is, in some ways, Oregon's MO so far. They tend to play a lot of tight first halves, either because they're feeling teams out or they haven't been able to grind teams down with defensive pressure.
So far, close, as we see Jessie Schaffner make a nice adjustment to get to that disc, but now her throw floats up over the top and is going to turn over near midfield.
I believe that's Schaffner's second floated throw early on this game. Schaffner playing very well this season, but has always been a bit turnover prone.
Vicky Sue with the disc for Washington. She gets it off to Stern, and Stern goes out to the far side. Now the dish right back to Stern in a power position. Doesn't have a cutter, though. A little frustrated as she tries to direct traffic downfield. So she'll dish back to Sue. Comes across, and that throw goes over the head of Stern and back into the hands of Oregon. So once again, an opportunity for the defense wasted as Jessie Schaffner makes a nice cut, gets into some space, and now dishes it back. And now down the field goes Oregon once again, looking for Bartruff. Bartruff, great speed, and she'll get to the disc and stay in bounds off that back line and puts Oregon back in front. It's 4-3.
Bethany Kaler just showcased on that point. What you couldn't see behind Stern's frustration not having a deep look was how well Kaler timed her poach into the deep lane, sagging off of her offside cutter, Sarah Edwards, to take away the deep option from the Washington cutters. Very smart play by Kaler, and then afterwards on the turn, able to get a couple of quick touches in and put up a shot to a speedy receiver. Our second goal from Bartruff so far.
So an even game so far. Both offenses not playing to the kind of efficiency that we're perhaps likely to see at Nationals. or even later in this contest, but so far doing a very good job of keeping the defensive line's offense from getting anywhere near the end zone. No real opportunities yet for either team.
Yeah, we haven't seen either team have a very possession-heavy point where they're really valuing the disc. These are teams right now that are both taking their shots, and I think that is a little bit of an element of feeling each other out. A little bit of that prize fighter kind of maneuver. Go in with a couple of jabs, see where the other team's defense is, where their strengths is, before you try and land the haymaker.
Both of these teams with some outstanding individuals, and we'll talk a little bit later about teams Callahan nominees and possibilities to win the coveted individual player award in the college game as Washington's offense gets back underway. Good handler defense as this throw comes all the way across, and a nice grab over the defender. Stern going up. And now Washington's offense back underway, and another backhand down the field. This throw gets pushed a little bit down by the wind. A little bit of a gust on the last point, and doesn't hang up long enough for the intended receiver to run it down. So Oregon's D-line with another chance here on offense. It's Fontenot. She moves it to Walrus. Walrus, a bit of a little inside backhand, but it bounces in and out of the hands of Brunick. So Washington will get it back here. Kostick walking to the disc, picking it up for UW. Kostick with the high release backhand. Gets it right back. Uses her length so well. She floats it ahead. Molly Boyd faking. Now looking to Kostick. Kostick right on the goal line. And the little scoober into the end zone, and creative throws on that point from Amanda Kostick as Washington ties the game at 4s.
Kostick, probably the most creative thrower in the college women's game. We do have a matchup of two of the best throwers you will see in Sophie Darcher and Amanda Kostick in this game. Kostick basically making the lefty scoober part of the staple of her arsenal, but she'll take any throw at any time. She's got a wide arsenal, and she's happy to tap into each one of those weapons at the most effective time.
It's really turned into a beautiful evening, Keith. After a gray, typical Seattle day, it has turned out quite nice, and I think that has helped grow the burgeoning sideline.
I certainly don't want to jinx it, but nice for the first time today to not be dealing with the on-again and off-again rain. Watching earlier in today's games, this is my first trip to Seattle, as you know, but our audience doesn't. And the gray gloom was like right out of the storybook.
So we're all tied up. An even match so far. Washington getting set to pull. And the pull is up. Oregon quick to the disc as usual. Now into the hands of Sophie Darch. Darch fakes, now goes to the backhand of the outside, finding Schaffner. Schaffner so often initiating this offense. Now she'll go down the field, just beats the poach, but not quite into the end zone is Fugue. Odie on the goal line, and now she'll dish into the end zone for another quick Oregon score, and they're back in front 5-4.
Another episode of the same show, right? You start with Sophie Darch with the disc in her hands, that side stack set that I will say Oregon's use of spacing expert on that side stack set. They don't just get an open cutter, they get someone who's going to pick up 30 yards on the first throw. And when you eat up that much yardage, it's just hard to stop the forward momentum of an offense. Both teams, I will say, are doing a great job getting open up the line. And in part, that's because of the skill of their throwers who are able to throw those tough up-the-line inside throws. But both teams have had a lot of success with the up-the-line cut, and we saw it there for the score to finish off that point.
So, no breaks so far in the game. Both offenses managing to get the job done despite some turnovers. And let's talk, Keith, a little bit about the Callahan possibilities for these teams. And we've talked already so far this season on Ultiworld about how it might be difficult for a Northwest player to win a Callahan Award just because these teams, as you can see from this weekend, tend not to leave the West Coast and get seen by a lot of teams outside of their region, as we have an offsides on the pull. But who are the standouts on these teams, and what are some of the difficulties, perhaps, of standing out on such outstanding rosters?
It's always a challenge to figure out the balance between is being on a strong team going to hurt or help a player. The player may have to shoulder less of a load, but their team has more success, which tends to raise a player's profile. Both teams have already made their Callahan nominees, Oregon with the senior Sophie Darch and Washington. Oh, great layout D there.
Excellent effort in the lane from Foley Galvin. Getting just enough of the disc to tip it out of the flight path of the Oregon receiver. So once again, Fugue with an opportunity to put a break on the board. Odie on the far side. Now it comes all the way across to Lily Weaver. Weaver ahead to Walrus. And now a shot down the field. Kaler putting it up. It's floating up into the sky, anybody's disc, and everybody misreads it as it floats down to the turf. And lucky for Washington, as there were 2 Oregon players down there and just 1 defender, but they avoid giving up the break. And now Kostick will walk to the disc to chap it in for Washington.
We do see Washington's Callahan nominee, Sheer Stern, on the field. As Kostick lights a backhand up for Barbara Hoover, but not able to track that down.
So Kaler will pick up for Oregon. Ahead to Walrus. Now, perhaps in the most threatening position yet, is Oregon. Kaler to the outside. Weaver. Weaver back into the middle. Handlers moving it back and forth amongst themselves. Kaler with it.
Washington taking away some of these inside lanes that Oregon's been attacking so effectively.
And everybody stopped on the field for a moment thinking maybe that disc was down, but observers didn't make a ruling, so Oregon continued, and once again, lucky for Washington, heads up downfield defense. And so they'll get the disc back. That was Molly Boyd on the block. Moving ahead, Washington. Back into the middle for Stern. She dumps it off to Kelly Hall. Now out to the sideline.
Perhaps to take away some of those upline options, both teams seem to sagging off the handlers a little bit into the lanes.
Kostick holding. And you can see that poaching downfield. Downfield defenders peeling off of their marks as the marks clear out into the space and hanging out in the open lane as the shot goes up, looking for Grace Noah, and she can't come down with it. So Weaver will pick it up for Oregon. Both teams not afraid to take shots down the field. Nice grab from Walrus. Moves it up the sideline and now flick up the field. Best position yet. And Angsta Lido goes into the end zone, and it's a big layout score and a huge spike.
Wow, what a play there. Dre Fontenot getting big for that, and that's what she does best, is make big plays. She gives this team another explosive element that really fires up a team that's driven by momentum. When they can get on a roll, they can really put the pressure on teams, and we'll see if they can turn that into an opportunity to really push back at this Element team as they go into half.
Oregon knocking on the door that entire point and finally coming up with the big play. Fontenot making up for misreading the disc earlier on the floating backhand with the big layout for the score, and now Oregon putting the first break of the game on the board, 6-4.
A nice deep shot there from Alex Odie on that point. It's just interesting to see how she has transitioned from being one of the horses downfield for this team to being one of the active players around the disc who's able to make plays with the disc in her hands, just building on that experience over and over, especially the club experience that she's picked up over the past couple of seasons. Got a timeout on the field here.
See the sideline lined with fans. Almost end zone to end zone at this point. And Washington in the huddle here.
Now, Charlie, to go back to our point about the top players on this team, while both teams have made their Callahan nominees, there are some very strong players throughout these rosters, star players in the game. Oregon, you do see Bethany Kaler. She is one of the premier all-around threats in the game, and Coach Lou Burris loves to utilize her in a variety of ways. She's taken on a very handler-heavy role in this game, but she's also one of their top defenders, and they'll use her to try and take some of the best players they come against out of their game. We also saw Dre Fontenot making a big play for them. Jesse Schaffner has been very involved. On the Washington side, we've always talked about them having a big six, and at any given point, we've really only seen 3 of those players on at the same time, with Amanda Kostick, Lucy Williams, Alicia Letourneau, Sarah Edwards, Barb Hoover, and Sheer Stern. It's very rare that they will load one of these lines with a number of those players, but we may get to see a little bit of that this game, just show how important it is as we see Williams, Kostick, Hoover, Letourneau, Edwards, and Stern all on this line.
So Washington understanding the value of this point. So we see the Oregon defensive line getting ready and set to pull, and it'll be Darch with the big backhand, tailing towards the far sideline. And I believe it landed out of bounds, so it's going to be brought to the brick mark by Washington.
Lucy Williams preparing to initiate. Washington going with a side stack look, but Oregon responding with a bit of a poach. Do leave a thrower wide open.
And a nice find from Williams. Getting it to the outside for Bailey Kilmer. Now in the hands of Williams once again, and Williams fires down the field and finds a wide open cutter in the end zone. Sarah Edwards reels it in for the Washington score, and that's exactly what Washington was looking for coming out of that timeout.
Yeah, that was a bit too easy. Maybe a bit of confusion there from the Oregon defense. When you're a team that employs chaos often, sometimes it'll turn around and burn you.
A wide open Kilmer on this near sideline, finding some room, and Williams making sure to attack the poach. 6-5, the score here in Seattle. You're watching Ultiworld's live coverage of the 2014 Northwest Challenge Showcase game, presented by 5 Ultimate. And so now, if you're Washington, Keith, what are you looking to do to put a little bit of more pressure on Oregon after the turn? I mean, they've been able to get some turnovers, mostly from Oregon mistakes so far, but haven't really had a lot of opportunities into the end zone. We've seen more shots go up from Oregon that have had chances than from Washington. What's going to need to change? Are they going to just need to put out more of those big 6?
Washington has been pretty aggressive offensively this game, and maybe they do need to take that long possession-based point. Use the disc skills of their top players to march the disc down the field. We do see this line very lightly stacked, 4 of that big 6 on the line, and we'll see if that helps them perhaps generate the break that they're so in need of at this point.
Williams with the rolling pull. Casey Harris picking it up for Oregon and finding Darch in the center. Darch back to the outside.
The first time that we've seen Washington really challenge that initiating look from the side stack.
And it's a quick turnover from Harris. Harris hasn't touched the disc much yet in this game. And so now Washington with their best field position for the defensive line yet in this game. Molly Boyd. She'll dump it back.
Williams with the drop there, uncharacteristic.
Straight drop. Gives it right back to Oregon. They attack quickly. Darch putting up the flick. Has a wide open cutter downfield. Bartroff all alone, and now she'll dish not quite into the end zone. Right on the goal line is Oregon. Angstadt Lido going into the end zone, but right into the hands of a Washington defender. And a huge hand block. Telegraphing that throw a bit was the Washington player, and now Darch looking into the end zone, but her throw will just be out of reach of the second effort from the trailing offensive player. And so Washington with it once again. Williams will bring it to the line for Element.
Williams, a fifth-year veteran leader on this team. She was a big factor in the team that won the national championship over this Oregon team.
Williams immediately attacking downfield, but better downfield defense from Bethany Kaler, waiting for that throw, and Kaler knocks it away and immediately initiates the Oregon offense. Odie to the near sideline for Bartroff.
Kaler and Edwards are a pretty exciting matchup to see on the field here, and the kind of thing we're going to get at this game. These are two players who will be in the Callahan conversation for the rest of their careers.
Angstadt Lido moves it to the sideline for Kaler. Kaler fires an inside flick. Now bouncing back into the hands of Darch. Kaler looking to the end zone, firing to the end zone. And it bounces, and a
little bit of a bobble there from Alex Odie, but is able to reel that in for the score. Oregon able to come up with another point despite a good opportunity from Washington. Lucy Williams just struggling to help her team there. A couple of mistakes, and you hope that a veteran player like that can keep those from creeping into her mindset and affecting her ability to have an effective rest of this half.
And so multiple chances for Washington that point, but unable to convert. The drop from Williams on the short field turn from Oregon, giving it back to the Fugue offense. So score now 7-5. Oregon holding on to that one break lead and looking to break here to take half. Game being played today to 15.
Both of these teams 1-0 so far at this tournament. Washington handily defeating Colorado earlier today. Oregon able to beat Carleton in a rematch of last year's national championship game. A fairly close early game. Took half 8-5. Carleton would only score one more time for the rest of the game. Oregon really putting on a clinic in the second half.
Pull up here from Oregon. Disc lands just in front of the end zone. Put it to the hands of Kostick.
Here we see one of those junky looks that Oregon's known so well for, and it causes enough chaos to force a turnover.
And that disc came out poorly. Schaffner now to the outside, but her throw will trail out of bounds. Schaffner cutting very well so far in the game, but not as strong with the disc. It's her third or fourth throwing turnover. And Washington's offense back underway. Stern. Covered by Brunick. Now moving ahead, Barb Hoover with it on the far sideline. She'll dump it back to Kostick. Kostick with the hammer, but too far out in front of Stern. So Oregon will have another chance here to take this game to half, up 3. Brunick will bring it to the line for Fugue.
Kostick and Schaffner, such interesting players offensively. Their skill sets give them the ability to do amazing things with the disc, but also to take risky shots that generate a lot of turnovers for their offenses, as we see a Schaffner throw come out, unable to be handled by the receiver, and short field opportunity for Washington. Kostick ready to come in. If you're a coach, you don't want to rein in a player like that and take them out of the mentality of being an aggressive thrower who utilizes their skill set to benefit their team, but you also have to put them in a situation where they're not wasting your offensive opportunities, and it's something that both of these players and their coaches have had to manage over the course of their careers.
Kostick follows up the Schaffner turnover with one of her own, and now Schaffner will tap it in, fire down the field, and a beautiful grab on the sideline from Fontenot. Now she'll immediately fire down the field, but a great rundown block from the Washington defender, preventing Oregon from taking this to halftime.
A very difficult throw there from Fontenot. The cross-field throw, trying to hit the closing window with the back of the end zone line, threatening to make that an even smaller place to put a disc. And the Oregon offense pays for it, but they'll give a full field to work with here for Washington.
7-5 the score here in Seattle. Oregon with a 1-break lead if you're just joining us. That's the only break of this game. Washington now on the far side. Hoover looking ahead. Now to this near sideline for Grace Noah. Noah gets it back. Noah fires the backhand, and it's in and out of the hands of the intended receiver, Kelly Hall. So another mistake from Washington. And you can't make this many mistakes if you want to beat a team as good as Oregon, Keith. But a huge layout D against Fontenot. What a play from Hoover. A full 2 feet in front of Fontenot on that play as Kostick picks up for this Element offense. And now she'll fire into the end zone. Big layout in the end zone, but can't be reeled in. Has some rain beginning to fall here.
Washington just giving up too many opportunities here, especially in that red zone. You got to punch these in, especially if you want to beat a team that's the #1 ranked team in the country. Got to be frustrating for the coaching staff.
Fontenot with it on the sideline for Fugue. She'll dish ahead to Schaffner. Schaffner with a great grab, and then she winds up a backhand and fires it down the field, but it's going to be too far out in front. But that's a nice look. That's a good turnover, I think, for Jessie Schaffner.
Especially we're seeing the wind pick up a little bit here, and you can see it affect that throw. Going to force Washington to try and battle back 70 yards against a little bit of wind, and Schaffner showing some great footwork. The stutter step, very effective when you've got such good quickness, and we see it generated up the line cut there.
A very light, almost misting rain falling here as a big shot goes up from Kostick. 2 offensive players, 2 defenders, and both Washington players come down with a hand on it. Now a hammer looking into the end zone, and another mistake. Shira Stern going too far over the top. And coaching staff, as you just pointed out, Keith, getting a little frustrated on the sideline, just threw the pen down in a little bit of anger with that decision. And Oregon now going to take a wise timeout.
I was just thinking how Stern has been the linchpin for this Washington offense with her consistency. She brings that calming element to the field for Washington, and to see her make a rush decision like that, a very difficult, low percentage throw, not a big window for her receiver to work with. That's a decision I'm sure she's going to want back later in this game.
So Oregon takes a timeout on the goal line with the score 7-5 as they look to take half coming out of this timeout. You're watching Ultiworld's coverage of the 2014 Northwest Challenge presented by 5 Ultimate. We'll be right back.
Sweatshirts with water bottles built in. Cleat bags that you can also wear as underwear. Velcro socks. Wider shorts.
I'm pretty sure I was here first.
Oh, I think I got here first.
You kidding me?
No, I got here first.
No, I came from over here and I was looking at the chair.
Looking at the chair? I couldn't even see the chair.
You were sipping your coffee.
I was not sipping coffee. This isn't even coffee.
I saw Shannon get here first.
Hey, let's leave it between them.
Of course you're gonna agree with her.
Come on, you guys.
Whose side are you on?
Whose side are you on?
I had a clear line of sight.
Tie goes the offense.
We're back from Seattle, Washington. Charlie Eisenhood alongside Keith Rayner. And the Oregon offense back on the field looking to take half here with a second break. Disc moving. And a turnover, a drop there from Brunick is going to give Washington another short field opportunity. And we'll see if they can take advantage this time. Kostick picking up for Element.
Brunick just not able to handle that. It looked like the wind made that disc flutter around a little bit right before it hit her hands. And Washington finally capitalizes. Kostick finding Molly Boyd, who's having a very big game so far.
And the sideline explodes after a long point that looked at times scary for Washington with a number of costly errors, but they managed to avoid a major penalty of letting Oregon take half. It's now 7-6, and now they'll have the advantage heading on the slightly downwind point to try to get their break back.
Washington taking a timeout here, really wanted to collect themselves to try and make a run into this half. We talked a little bit about this team, both of these teams having two of the top coaching figures at the head, but not only that, but both have pretty full staffs. They're not just running with one coach at a clipboard and maybe someone helping them out. These are experienced staffs. On the Washington side, we have Kyle Weisbrod and Moses Rifkin heading up that staff. And on the Oregon side, they have Lou Burris, obviously, at the top. They have help from Julia Sherwood. They've got a pretty experienced group that's working with this team, and they all know each other very well.
Good game so far. More of what you would expect to see out of an Oregon-Washington matchup. Very much unlike the 15-4 blowouts that Oregon has handed down in both of the previous meetings this season. And as we mentioned earlier in the broadcast, Washington has not beat Oregon since the finals of the 2012 college championships, Keith.
Last time they beat them as well, not just beat them, they beat them 15-7, they beat them hard and on the biggest of stages, but even just in that short time, you can see how much the media around Ultimate has changed. We've got ESPN involved, and now we've got live streams of tournaments like this under the lights with showcase games. This is a great opportunity to showcase the college women's game, and I'm proud that Ultiworld's a part of that.
Absolutely. It's going to be a great weekend. We hope you are able to join us throughout the weekend. We'll be streaming pretty much all day tomorrow, and then 5 games on Saturday and 3 more on Sunday. And as we pointed out earlier in the broadcast, not a typical pool play followed by bracket play tournament. Instead, it's high-profile matchups from all of the top teams. So we're going to get some previews of the kinds of games we're expecting to see in the quarterfinals, semifinals, and perhaps even the finals of the college championships.
You could even say, Charlie, that this isn't a tournament. It's just 7 games. It's just a collection of games. Your team gets 7 assigned games. You show up, you try and win them all. If we have an undefeated team at the end, perhaps they'll be crowned the champion of the tournament. But for the most part, without a bracket or a reward structure for your performance during the course of a tournament, it's really just 7 games.
Darch starting things off for the Oregon offense once again, finding Kaler. Kaler swings across.
Washington in a poachy look, a 2-3-2 set with Letourneau and Stern up front.
Kaler back into the middle for Harris.
Another stacked line as well from Element. The Big Six joined by Molly Boyd, probably the team's best athlete. We'll see if they can handle the fugue attack as we see Darch unleash one towards Boyd's side of the field.
Defenders in the area and unable to pull it down.
That one tailing out of bounds. Bartroff not really getting a good look at trying to make a play on it.
So now Washington's top players with an opportunity to get their break, the first of the game for this Element team.
What matchups we've got all over this field. Boyd and Bartroff, probably the fastest player from each team. Darch matched up with Letourneau right now.
Letourneau dumps back to Kostick. Kostick with the backhand ahead. Nice grab from Stern under nice pressure there from Odie. Moving ahead, Stern with it. Stern putting up the backhand. This could be for the break, but it's going to float too far out of bounds. So 2 shots down the field, 1 from each team, both ending up out of bounds. And Oregon will start with 70 yards to go to try to take this game to half, up a break.
A lot of faith here from the coaching staff in Molly Boyd, who as we said, is playing very well, but in some ways is kind of like a rookie on this team.
Odie to the middle for Darch. Darch, the dump, gets it back.
Back to a Poachy look here. A shot going up, giving the chance for the Washington defenders to get on it, but also giving Oregon the chance to fast break, and they'll take advantage.
Bartruff dumps it off to Harris. Now back to Odie. To Harris on the sideline. Harris looking into the end zone, not quite in. Odie with it. Near the goal line, just a couple yards out. Dumps it back. Kaler holding.
Not really a hard force one way or the other there, and giving Kaler some chances to look to the break side, not getting the options. Here's Darch by herself. She'll go over the top of the hammer. Drops in perfectly for Kaler.
Perfect
and a big
shot.
kick spike.
And that's for a half. Sophie Darch with the perfect hammer, finding Kaler in the corner of the end zone. And Oregon goes into the break, up a pair, and up a break here against Washington Element. Washington with so many chances in this first half, unable to convert so far. So we will pause for halftime here. You're watching Ultiworld's coverage of the 2014 Northwest Challenge. The score here at halftime, Oregon 8, Washington 6. We'll be back in about 10 minutes for the start of the second half. Welcome back to Seattle, Washington for the second half of this showcase matchup between number 1 ranked Oregon Fugue and number 9 ranked Washington Element. Good game so far. Oregon up 2 at the break. Just a single break though, and only 1 so far in the game, and that is in the hands of Oregon, and that's how they are up here at halftime, 8-6. I'm Charlie Eisenhood, Keith Rayner alongside me. And Keith, let's talk about some keys to the second half. Let's start with Washington, down 2, needs to get something going defensively. What's going to be the difference maker for them here in the second half?
Well, Washington hasn't had trouble getting the disc into their hands. They just had trouble getting it into the end zone, which is a pretty classic story against Oregon. They have such a strong defensive set that it can be difficult to attack even if they're giving you opportunities to get the disc. So Washington's going to need to find a way to finish off possessions. We saw that series of red zone possessions that they just could not punch in. They're going to need to be more efficient, especially when they get the disc near the goal line. Conversely, I think they're going to have to pressure, both teams are going to have to pressure the reset better, but that's going to be a key for Washington, or for Oregon, if they want to continue to roll past Washington, is they're going to need to really force those resets to be difficult, see if they can force some of the top handlers on this Washington team up the line without catching a power position disc. They're going to need to force them out of the play and force Washington's offense to run through someone else.
And it's going to be Washington getting set to receive here to start this second half. And a good even game so far, all things considered. Both teams with opportunities. Oregon with the better chances overall. But Washington has been a drop or two away from a score, it feels like. And if they can clean up the execution here in the second half, we're probably going to have a game that goes down to the wire. But that said, Oregon has been a second half team all season long. You've seen them play earlier today and show that off. As we see the second half get underway here with the pull from Oregon.
A number of times at the Stanford Invite, we saw Oregon play tight first halves and then pull away in the second half. We'll see if they can do that again here.
Kostick to Stern, right back to Kostick. Now down the field. Nora Landry, she'll dump it back to Kostick. Poachy look here again from the Oregon defense. Trying to gum up the lanes. Kostick to the outside. Paterno holding, dishing it back to Kostick, who will swing it all the way around.
A good job by these marks contesting the early upfield throws. But we finally see a dish set one up for Kostick, and she looks for Letourneau. Fontenot breaking it up.
Great defense from Fontenot. That speed allowing her to catch up to that disc. And I thought we might have a strip call there for a moment. It looked like it got to the hands of the Washington player, but no call on the field. And so Oregon with a chance to extend their lead here, and they'll immediately attack downfield. Good position from the Washington defender, and Schaffner can't track it down. So it'll go right back into the hands of Element.
That's a difficult play. The static huck, not Oregon's strength. Just tapping the disc in, no motion, no power position, just trying to fight one up and unable to come down with that.
On the far side is Washington. Boyd holding, looking to get rid of it, and does. Hall going up the field, nice grab from Stern. She's played well so far in this game. Now a backhand up the line, but laying out. Washington receiver cannot bring it down, so Oregon once again with another opportunity. And a bit of impatience so far from Washington as we see a hand block from Kostick just stuffing that disc into the ground. And so a very short field here now from Washington. We'll see if they can find that patience that they've lacked so far in this game that's given Oregon so many chances. But returning the favor, getting the hand block right back. Great play there. Angela Toki. And as she moves it off the line, they go down the field. It will be another turnover on a huck from this Oregon offense.
One of the things we've seen Fugue do so well is a team that runs a hard transition offense. One of the important things to do is to stop the key threat after the turnover. That's the person picking up the disc and the person streaking to the end zone. Washington's done a fairly good job of containing that, but what Oregon does is move the disc quickly so they can change who that primary threat is to make the big throw. Here we've seen them putting up static hucks.
Kostick ripping a big backhand. This is going to float up. And a huge grab down the field and a dish into the end zone. What a grab from Barb Hoover. Just out-muscling her defender. And then she puts it into the end zone to get Washington back within one.
Hoover probably the best in the air of anybody on this Washington team. Schaffner, small in stature, so even a big heart's not going to help you win that matchup in the air. And a jump ball there from Kostick that Hoover's going to come down with certainly a higher percentage of the time.
8-7 the score here now. And we'll see if Washington can finally put a break on the board. As you pointed out, coming out of the break here, Keith, they've had the chances, but not the execution so far. See the defensive line getting set. Kostick out there once again for the Element defense.
Another one of those stacked lines for Washington, throwing all top six on along with Molly Boyd. Just shows you how important this point is, but it also shows you how the structure of this tournament is allowing Washington to try some new things. Not having to play for 3 games in the day, they're really able to let these players run. And this is the first time we've seen Washington go to that route through this season, and it's the first time Oregon's seen it. And it's exactly what Lou Burris talked about at the beginning of the game. We aren't sure that we've really seen Oregon or Washington play, and now both teams are getting a chance to see what that really looks like.
And a lot of the first half felt like the teams were still feeling each other out as that disc continues to sneak away from Oregon. Now it's Darch with it in the middle.
Again, the 2-3-2 look from Washington, looking to slow down some of the transition opportunities.
Darch winds up the backhand and puts it down the field, looking to the back of the end zone, but it goes in and out of the hands of Bartroff, who once again found some space down there, but perhaps watching that back line, trying to stay in bounds, can't bring it in.
Yeah, that disc was tailing a little bit towards that back right corner on the far side of your screen, and Bartroff trying to get a good read on it while staying full speed and managing the line spacing. A difficult task for her and not able to reel that in.
Kostick holding for Washington. She'll swing it into the middle. Moving ahead, and Stern once again finding room underneath. Hoover with it on the near side. Gets it ahead, and too often Washington getting into a power position without anywhere to go with it. This throw floats up and over the top and out of the reach of Kostick, so it'll be back into the hands of Oregon at midfield. Immediately attacking once again. Darch now, another backhand looking for Bartroff, but once again does not connect.
Again, we're seeing a little bit of the downwind perhaps playing in this game. Both of those discs being pushed hard towards the back line and getting a little bit past Bartroff, but maybe a little bit easier of a shot to live with when you know your opponent has to work with a little bit of a breeze against them.
Tapped into play by Williams. And a big hand block there right on the line, Casey Harris. So both teams coming up with some huge point blocks, and it'll be a very short field here for Oregon. Darch on the sideline.
Second time we've seen Williams hand block this game as we see Darch go to the end zone to Kaler.
And it's a quick and easy score for Oregon after a couple of turnovers, and they're back in front by 2.
Williams still struggling to find her rhythm in this game, and she's definitely a player that we know Washington can lean on to help them contribute to making this comeback. But without her, we'll see how they manage the rotation and how they manage to continue to push offensively.
Both of these teams having great success this season. Oregon 21-1. And the #1 ranked team in both the USA Ultimate rankings and the Ulti-World Power rankings. Washington comes into the game ranked number 9 on Ulti-World, number 4 by USA Ultimate, as they have a record of 13-4.
Oregon's one loss coming by a single point on the pool play day against UC Santa Barbara earlier this year. That talented squad led by Lisa Pick-Hathley. Washington's taken a couple of losses, 2 at the hands of this Oregon team. 1 at the hand of Stanford at the Stanford Invite.
Here's Kostick in the middle for Element. And a hack on the mark, uncalled. Should go to the outside. Now coming underneath, but this throw well off target, so Oregon with another opportunity here. Moving it into the middle for Toki. Here's Kaler. Back to Toki. To Kaler. Now around to the far side, and another point block. And Schaffner with the big windup on the flick, giving her mark an opportunity to get in front of it. And Washington avoids giving Oregon their biggest lead of the game as we watch Costa go down the field. But that throw never getting any air underneath it. Schaffner will pick it up for Oregon. Sidelines loud for both teams here. Oh, this throw is a beauty. Schaffner with it in a power position, and now she'll wind up the backhand. She has some room downfield, finds Angstad-Lido. Back into the middle and now into the end zone. Fontenot brings it down. Washington defenders frustrated as Oregon takes their biggest lead of the game. It's now 10-7. The Oregon player now down in the end zone. Is that Fontenot, Keith?
Yeah, it looked like Fontenot grabbed a leg after the score. I imagine it's probably just cramping as they try and massage that out now. Caught the score and immediately grabbed it. Went down in a bit of pain. You know how those cramps come up and they really shock you when you get them. So I imagine she'll be okay, but we'll give you any updates should there be anything important that comes from the situation.
Certainly didn't look like anything happened on the catch that would have caused her any sort of serious injury. Sort of routine catch, and she does look to be just stretching it out. And she'll walk off on her own. So looks like just a calf cramp.
There we did see Oregon manage to challenge some of the reset and outfield looks to Washington's top player. Searster not getting a touch on that point, and early on we saw Kostick get real high in the stall count before she was able to find the crossfield throw to Edwards. That's what we talked about. If Oregon can challenge those looks and force other people on this Washington team to step up and make plays, they could really make it difficult for Washington to get back into this game.
So far, it's just been mistakes from Washington. And of course, you have to give some credit, or maybe even most of the credit, to Oregon's defense for causing those errors, but some of them have been simply drops in and out of the hands, and they have piled up, and it's now given Oregon a 3-point lead as Kostick gets things started here for Washington. This throw, a nice one, big bid, but in and out of the hands. Lucy Williams, the intended receiver, so Oregon with another opportunity here. Foley Galvin holding for Fugue.
Great dump defense from Williams there to deny the reset look, but eventually they're able to get something off on a late stall count.
Weaver flips it into the middle. Walrus down the field, and Walrus cutting well, gets it right back. Now has the backhand and fires it, looking to the back of the end zone, but out of bounds.
One thing I'll say I've been surprised about is just how quiet this crowd has been. I imagine they're heavily favoring Washington, the home team here, and I certainly I've heard a couple of sighs when some of these turnovers have happened, but you really would like that group to help inject some energy into your home team. If you're Washington, you really want those fans to get rowdy for you and help you make a comeback here.
Molly Boyd with it in the middle, moving it ahead. Letourneau, and Letourneau's throw a little bit behind Williams. Williams can't get her hands on it, so Oregon will get it back here. Odie up the field, now into the hands of Galvin. Back to Odie. Across the field to Weaver. And all the way to the far side for Walrus. Nice looking offense from Oregon here. Letitia Guillet with it on the sideline. She'll dump it back to Galvin. With it in the middle is Walrus. And Walrus looking to get it into the end zone and does so. Odie just across the line, and Oregon now rolling here, up 4. It's 11-7, Keith.
You know, I've got to wonder if maybe the legs of these top players for Washington are starting to suffer. I think that they have played they've put a bit more mileage on themselves during the course of this game. Their offense has had a few longer points, and they've stacked the lines a couple of times. That's something we haven't seen Oregon really do yet, and maybe that's leading itself to some of these mistakes that these top-end players from Washington are making. Both Letourneau and Williams have struggled this game to really make a big positive impact for Washington, and that's 2 of the top players on this team.
Williams with a number of turnovers so far in this game. We just watched on the last Washington turnover, a little bit hesitant going into the lane to try to attack that disc. And Oregon able to capitalize to take their biggest lead of the game. You're watching Ultiworld's coverage of the 2014 Northwest Challenge Showcase game. Oregon and Washington under the lights here in Seattle, Washington, presented by 5 Ultimate.
This is what Oregon likes to do to you. They'll let you play tight in the first half. They'll feel you out a little bit, and then in the second half, they come out swinging. And we've seen that be the MO for this Fugue team, and we're seeing them dominate second halves continuously.
2 more breaks on the board for Fugue here in the second half as Schaffner puts up the backhand pull. Now it's with Kostick for Elements. And one of our first foul calls of this game. Kostick getting bumped on her throw there.
Kostick again matched up with Toki, who's got a lot of length and has a very active mark. May keep Kostick not from getting off throws, but from getting off a lot of yardage gainers.
Washington offense moving here. Grace Noah with it. She'll dish it back to Stern. Gets it over to Kostick. Kostick looking to open something up, but downfield cutters just not able to make anything happen. Great defense on the dump from Oregon and forces Kostick to just put it up down the field, and Oregon getting a coverage sack there.
You have Sarah Edwards and Sheer Stern back in the backfield there as we see Schaffner just ripping a backhand.
This one floating up, and a huge defensive effort in the end zone. What a play downfield, and that gets the crowd fired up.
Nora Landry really hustling to make that play, and maybe that can be some of the momentum that this Washington offense needs. During that last coverage sack, as you noted, Barb Hoover pinned to the sideline by Bethany Kaler and just not involved. You really want to see one of your experienced players, especially the only one who's downfield at that point, step in, make a play, and get your disc reset and moving.
And you can see the difference in pace from these two teams. After that turnover, after the sideline getting loud, Washington takes nearly the full time to get that disc tap back into play. Whereas when Washington turns it over, Oregon immediately picks it up and attacks.
And that really is probably by design. I do think Washington, especially in this game, started off very aggressively, but I don't know if that's a place of their strengths.
Nearly blocked in the lane, but Washington maintains possession. Now this throw floating, and nice defense. Haley Walrus forcing Hoover into trying to make a play on it. And now this disc pops up, and it will float harmlessly to the ground, so Washington really needing this point now has their best field position so far.
We've seen a lot of floaty discs come out of hands today, and that's a little bit of factor of the wind, probably a little bit of nerves, and a little bit of defensive pressure.
Kostick finding room and just drops the disc. Looking upfield a little bit before she had secured it.
A very tight window there. Probably a play you expect Kostick to make, but not a lot of reaction time to try and reel in that disc.
Schaffner again faking the flick and putting up the big backhand. And this time it will connect. Angstad-Lido with it, and she's into the end zone. And so it's another break for Oregon. They now lead by 5, and it's a 4-1 run here in the second half. And Washington had every opportunity there to score on offense, and mistake after mistake and great defensive pressure from Oregon makes it the biggest lead for Fugue so far this game.
Now this is far from the only mistake that we saw on that point, but I believe it was Nora Landry on the mark there when Schaffner put up the backhand huck. You've got to deny the backhand there. You've got to force her to try and power a flick downfield and give your receiver a chance to make a play on it. Letting her get over to her backhand side where she gets a lot more throwing range and she can put it out in front of the receiver and make it much more difficult to defend is kind of unacceptable in that situation. But admittedly, is a very difficult thing to do. It's easy for me to say here on the sideline and say, hey, take away the backhand.
And Schaffner has had a lot of success with the backhand so far in the game and has had a number of turnovers when she's been throwing the flick. And I think that goes right to your point, Keith. It's the little things that make a difference, and that's what Oregon does so well, and that's why they're number 1 and have been for 2 years running.
It'll be interesting to see how they manage the rest of this weekend. Really, the matchup with Ohio State has got to be the one circled on their calendar. They'll also see Stanford, but Stanford with a very short roster at this tournament. They've suffered some injuries, a bit of travel probably factoring into that, but with somewhere around the neighborhood of 13 players. So I'm not sure we're really going to see what Stanford has to offer, and Oregon probably won't either. But they will get tests from Western Washington. We expect another team that's very strong. And there are some very high-quality teams. UBC looked very good today. The rest of this weekend is going to play out very interestingly.
With so many quality teams on hand, we do expect to see some great games and some big performances, and getting things started off on the right foot here. It's been a good game here so far. Could turn into a bit of a blowout here in the second half, but Washington looks like a team that if they can decrease the execution errors is right there, and we saw it in the first half. They were right alongside Oregon for most of that first half. So
just competing in this game is a really important step for Washington, who struggled to do so earlier this year. But being able to compete with this Oregon team may put you in a position where you could beat every other team in this field.
Williams puts up the backhand. This is going to float towards the sideline, and it will trail out of play.
Williams obviously a little frustrated with herself, has not played her best game today.
Oregon on the far side, going up the sideline. Nice throw into a tight space. Now Odie puts up the throw, looking down the field, and nice defensive effort there from Washington. Williams has been able to get some Ds, but hasn't been as strong on the offensive side of the disc. Here's Stern. Nice gainer and dish ahead. Edwards moves it to the middle for Stern. Now out to the far side. A high release backhand towards the end zone, but not quite in. Stern with it just a couple yards out. And now attacking the end zone is Letourneau, and she'll get in. And so Washington stops the Oregon run, gets back within 4. It's 12-8.
Washington getting the disc back in the hands of their stars just where they need it, letting them really run the field there. Good to see Letourneau punching that one in after Williams got the D. Neither really delivering so far in this game, and they still have opportunities to make plays. That's the thing you got to remember as a player. Your last turnover doesn't affect your next opportunity to make a play.
And so Washington will send their defense out, still looking for their first break. And despite the 4-point Oregon lead, feels like the game is a little bit closer than that. And that one Washington break could start to turn a little bit of the momentum of this game. Sideline certainly anticipating something. They've seemed, as you pointed out earlier, a bit subdued, but anything that really gets something going positively for this Washington team could raise the energy here at the Fields quite a bit.
Washington, I feel like they could really use a one-possession score. They're going to get their opportunities. There have been few points in this game that have gone without both teams getting a hand on the disc. Washington really needs to just take one of those opportunities and jam it down the opponent's throat.
Kostik's pull lands at about near the brick mark on the sideline. Darch will get things going for this Oregon offense, which has been off the field for a few points here, and a tip disc will float up and back into the hands of Kaler. Darch firing the backhand, looking down the field for Bartroff, but a big block in the end zone. That throw just not getting there quickly enough.
Hoover had the read on that the entire time. Perhaps a box-and-one sort of defense there. It looked like Sarah Edwards manning up on one of the Oregon handlers while the rest of her team played a junkier set to stop some downfield options.
Kostik moves it to the sideline. Now ahead for Hoover. Back into the hands of Kostik. She finds Boyd. Boyd fakes the flick. Moves it ahead. Nice grab in the middle from Hoover. Hoover making herself known on this point. Looking for Kostik. Kostik can't find any separation. Now floating it up and over the top. Nice look there to the taller Kostik. Now with Bailey Kilmer. Kilmer ahead. Boyd looking downfield. Nothing there. Dumps it back to Kostik. Much more patience here from this Washington team.
Harris's ability to challenge Kostik's reset opportunities to take away some of her upfield options are going to be critical on this point.
Kostik reels it in and then gets tripped up by her defender.
Interesting.
Stand back up, and it looks like she's going to take a timeout here.
Kostik making a little bit of a mistake there perhaps in letting the mark reset on her through the foul call. If a player fouls you from behind, you better make sure when you come back in that they're still behind you. But she confidently takes a timeout, and this is exactly what we said Washington needs, is a one-possession score, and now they're facing an opportunity to do just that a little bit more than 20 yards outside the end zone.
You're watching Ultiworld's coverage of the 2014 Northwest Challenge, presented by 5 Ultimate. Score here 12-8. We'll be right back.
Mail time, everyone. Vero, Kip, P-Cap, Carl, ooh, another one for Vero. Carl again, Sophia, Exton, Ningo, and one for accounting.
You're losing your touch, Ben.
Welcome back to Seattle, Washington. Charlie Eisenhood and Keith Rayner with you. Oregon holding a 12-8 lead over Washington here in this showcase game. But Washington threatening to get their first break of the game here. A nice possession so far after the Oregon turnover as Kostick steps to the disc to put it back into play for Washington Element.
Washington setting up in a bit of a side stack. Instantaneously poached by Oregon.
Kilmer has her throw slightly tipped, and now it's back into the hands of Oregon. So another mistake in a big situation, and now it's another big shot from Schaffner down the field. This floating to the back of the end zone, and it floats over everybody's head. What another beautiful throw from Jesse Schaffner, who continues to get that backhand off. And it looks like we have a call down the field. But it appears that whatever the dispute was immediately overturned or taken back, so Washington will bring it to the line.
Washington looking to attack now.
And
a
a
big
great
D for Bartroff underneath there, running through that one.
Darch picks up for the Oregon offense. Gets it ahead to Odie, and Odie gets it into the end zone for Schaffner. And so just like that, Washington taking a timeout with a great opportunity to get a break on the board, but better defense from Oregon coming out of that timeout. And Oregon eventually takes advantage, going back up by 5, and now they're 2 points away from a victory here in this showcase game.
Another important opportunity that's going to fall by the wayside. You really want to punch in that possession in a difficult throw, but that's what we talked about. Oregon needing to do is force players to make plays on Washington who are outside of that big six, and they just were unable to come up with it. We'll say very impressed with the skill of both teams, especially in attacking that inside lane up the line. That is very difficult and something you only see from elite level teams. Resets are being challenged in the backfield, but because the throwers are so strong, that upfield side is still a threat, and it's generating power positions for throwers on both sides of the line.
Schaffner with the disc here, getting set to pull for Oregon.
Happy to see Fontenot checking back into the game. Probably safe to say it was just a cramp earlier.
Pull fielded by Washington. Nice dish there to Stern. And Stern's throw hand blocked coming out of her hands by Walrus. And now Oregon trying to attack down the field, but the throw does not connect, so.
Not clear if Landry may have gotten a piece of that Schaffner throw, but Stern's throw definitely a bit too casual.
Nice grab in the middle. Latorno with it, now moving it ahead and getting it immediately back. And Latorno will step and throw the backhand, looking to the back of the end zone, and 2 Washington players going up and bringing it down. And the sideline fired up about that one.
Miranda Moore able to make a big layout play there to keep the disc alive for Washington, and they don't waste that opportunity.
So Washington back within 4 here.
Still a tough road to hoe against what's presumably the best team in the country. It's a big deficit, but if there were ever a time to do it, is it not under the lights at your home tournament? First time you've ever put on the tournament. Big crowd, audience on the internet. If there was a time to show out, this is it.
And if they're going to do it, it's going to take a bigger effort from their top playmakers who have just been a little bit inconsistent so far in this game. As we see the sideline still packed. Cooling off here in Seattle. Down around 50 degrees. See the Oregon offensive line getting ready.
We haven't really talked a ton about the impact that Haley Walrus has had on this game. What an impressive player for a freshman. Can't sense it at all. She looks like a seasoned veteran, poised, composed, and not afraid of really going ahead and making an impact.
Odie to Kaler to Darch, and now Darch with the crossfield throw, but it looks like this is going to trail out of bounds. So Kostick will walk to the disc, and on almost, I would say 3 out of 4 possessions, or points I should say, Washington has had a chance to put in a break. That means Oregon has turned it over pretty frequently, but they have not been able to take advantage so far yet in this game.
That is Oregon's style of play. They're not afraid to give you a chance.
Kostick with the disc. Element still looking for their first break of the game, and it's not going to happen on this possession. As a nice D from Kaler gets it back into the hands of the Oregon offense. Darch looking to that inside lane, doesn't find it, now looking to the dump, and she'll float it out to the outside for Weaver.
Washington opening up the rotation here. I've seen a couple players I don't believe we've seen play a point yet. It's Sheer Stern with a giant layout block on the swing to Alex Odie.
What a play from Stern, and we know that she can make those kinds of plays. We've seen it all season long, and maybe that's the spark that they need here. Kostick holding, now moving it ahead to Boyd, up the field, once again past half field. This throw, though, is going to float up and over the top and back into the hands of Oregon, so another miscue from Washington, giving the disc back to Fugue. Weaver moves it to Kaler, to Darch, right back to Kaler. And now Kaler with the backhand, looking down the field, but another big block in the end zone from Washington. Done a good job of containing Bartra for the most part in this game.
From speaking to the Washington coaching staff earlier this year, I know how excited they were to get Molly Boyd involved as such a talented athlete. She has really shown herself to be impactful, not just with her legs, but with her willingness to go get the disc and make a throw afterwards. If she can continue to play like this and continue to grow at this rate, she's going to be a big threat for this team for the rest of the season.
And it's another throwing turnover from Washington. Good pressure from Oregon. And so Oregon once again with the disc on a short field. Kaler, inside flick, and goes into the end zone for Olivia Bartruff. And they hold once again on offense despite a couple of turnovers. It's back to a 5-point game.
A 5-point lead for Oregon is roughly insurmountable for pretty much anybody in the country. 14-9 and game point here for Oregon, so it's going to be it's going to be a very tough ask of this Washington team, but really at this point you just want to execute.
So a bumpy game so far for this Element offense. And a lot of weekend left.
Pretty exciting slate of games we have coming up over the course of the weekend. 8 more games to bring you. Some of the top women's college teams in the country. Every team here ranked in the top 25, both in the Ulti-World Power Rankings as well as the USAU algorithm. A lot of bids on the line, as well as the #1 seed at the National Championships in Cincinnati.
And lots of storylines to follow along with. If you haven't already, take a look at the Northwest Challenge preview. It's at the top of Ulti-World. And get familiar with the storylines from this weekend. Big questions about who's going to get bids. Can the Northwest come up with 6 bids to the college championships this year? It does look possible.
Our premium subscribers treated to a little bit of extra content regarding this weekend and the top games to watch and the matchups to watch within.
Miranda Moore with it here for Washington. So Williams, and now Williams' throw blocked in the lane. And Williams continuing to have a rough performance here in this showcase. Now with Fontenot for Oregon. Fontenot going up the line, and a great grab from Toki. And Toki gets it right back to Fontenot. And Fontenot going into the end zone. And it's Haley Walrus with the game-winning score for Oregon Fugue as they take down Washington 15-9 here under the lights in Seattle in this Northwest Challenge showcase game. And it was really a wire-to-wire victory for Oregon. Slowly putting together a lead in the first half and then pulling away here in the second half, Keith, with a 7-3 run to close out this game. And impressive performances from a number of these Oregon players. Fontenot playing very well. Schaffner with some big throws down the field. And the young Haley Walrus really making a name for herself and catching the game-winning score.
Walrus, a very strong young player, and we knew that coming into this season she was kind of the next generation of those Oregon stars. Along with Bethany Kaler, it gives them a really bright future, but really you look at their present right now, and they're a big threat, if not the heavy favorite, to come home with another national championship and give the Northwest its 3rd straight. These are the last 2 national champions you're watching play each other or just concluding a game, and we'll be able to see them in action over the course of this weekend against some of the top teams like Ohio State and Western Washington. Great slate of games. Really looking forward to it.
Be sure to join us. We begin tomorrow at 8 a.m. Pacific. That's 11 a.m. Eastern. And you can put the games on alongside some great March Madness college basketball matchups as well. We hope we'll see you then. The final here in Seattle, Oregon 15, Washington 9 for Keith Rayner and all of us here at Ulti-World. I'm Charlie Eisenhood, and we'll see you bright and early tomorrow morning for 8 more games from the Northwest Challenge. We'll see you then.